There are many different reasons why airplanes might crash, whether it's from missiles, getting caught in a storm, or not being able to see a mountain. UFOs might experience similar reasons for crashing as us humans do. If the technology of the future is coming from other planets, crashed UFOs are an extremely sought-after commodity. From a city that might have an alien hidden within its cemetery to crashes the government has tried to cover up, here are Craziest Crashed UFO Discoveries. Hey guys, this is your host, American Eye. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy that video. Number 11. The Kecksburg UFO Incident. In December of 1968, residents of the town of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, as well as others in Canada and Detroit, reported seeing a fireball streak through the sky. Astronomers believed it was actually a meteor bolide, which would explain the strange phenomenon. The residents claimed that it had crashed somewhere in the woods nearby to Kecksville, but the police and military supposedly found nothing. Witnesses describe it looking similar to this model UFO, which is displayed in the city near the Kecksburg Fire Station. 40 years later, NASA came forward, and they claimed that they had actually studied metallic fragments in the crash zone, but it was just from a Russian satellite. An investigative reporter actually sued NASA after she stated that NASA wasn't following the Freedom of Information Act after NASA said that they couldn't find the documents. Number 10. Height 611. This crazy UFO incident took place in the Soviet Union in 1986 on a mountain referred to as Height 611 by Americans. The town of Dalnegorsk in the far east of Russia, with a population of 37,000, was shocked when a large fireball made impact. A reddish ball was witnessed around 8 p.m. flying parallel to the ground about 800 meters or so above the ground. There wasn't a ton of big chunks on the spacecraft left over at the crash site, but this one here shows one of the examiners on the project. Lead in the object was uncovered and it was analyzed, which seemed to prove that it wasn't similar to the lead found in the local area. It was also determined that it contained significant amounts of silicon, nearly pure gold, and iron. Trace amounts of rare earth metals as well, such as bismuth and zinc, were uncovered. Number 9. The Gerardo Crash. One of the most mysterious UFO encounters on American soil happened in 1941 in the city of Cape Girardeau. Some of the details are finally coming to life. Reverend William Huffman believed that he was summoned to pray over the bodies of a vehicle crash, but he had no idea what kind of vehicle it actually was, or what he was getting himself into. Once he saw the victims, he was in complete shock. When he arrived to the military-controlled crash site, he was staring directly at the bodies of 3 little alien victims. They were described as the Greys, with large eyes, hairless skin, and small mouths and ears. Being a respected member of the church, Reverend William was not someone who would make up stories about aliens. Inside the spacecraft, there was hieroglyphic-type writing. Immediately after he did his job, he was of course sworn to secrecy that he would never talk to anyone about this ever again. In complete shock, he told his wife everything, and before she passed away, she decided to tell everyone what happened. The Reverend also gave this photo to 2 investigators holding up the body of an alien. There were also fire department records that coincide with the day of the crash, and members of the fire department being sworn to secrecy. Number 8. The Arequipa Incident. It's believed that many pilots around the world will be asked to shoot down UFOs so the government can gain knowledge from the technology and reverse engineer what's on board. If that's true, would that be considered cruel to aliens? In any case, in 1980 in Peru, a Sukhoi S-22 was called to intercept a spherical unidentified flying object that was getting too close to a military base. It was flying about 2,000 feet above the ground when the pilot took aim and shot off about 64 rounds of 30mm ammunition. The craft didn't seem to be affected at all by those rounds, and it rose in feet in elevation in a short period of time. The pilot then got an up-close look and was completely baffled by it. It mysteriously disappeared shortly after, but some believe it crashed in the Pacific Ocean. Number 7. Aurora. One of the earlier UFO crashes documented in the US is the Aurora, Texas incident, which took place in 1897, 50 years before the Roswell incident. A cigar-shaped UFO, or a mystery airship as it was known, crashed into a windmill in this town, and it was during this time when many reportings of cigar-shaped UFOs were taking place all across the US. It burst into pieces, and after sifting through the rubble, there was supposedly a body of a young alien. The little gray man not from this earth was also given a burial at a local cemetery, and rumor has it that it could still be there. The feds didn't appear to get involved at first in this one, and the villagers put the wreckage into a well. After that happened, those who drank from the well seemed to turn mysteriously ill and blamed it on the material of the craft. It was sealed off with a concrete slab as well. Someone later on found a gravestone with a flying saucer on it, and when the researcher asked if they can exhume the grave, they were declined access by the cemetery committee. Could the answers to aliens be laid right here? Number 6. Aztec. Although many people will dismiss this one as a complete hoax, it's still quite an interesting case and happened around the same time as the Roswell crash did. The writer known as Frank Scully claimed that on March 25, 1948, a spacecraft with no known origins crashed into planet Earth near Los Alamos radar station in El Vado, New Mexico. A top-secret recovery mission took place by the Air Force and 5th Army Division to see what was going on. Inside, it's claimed that there was as many as 16 aliens, but none had survived. It took place by the Air Force. The saucer was roughly 100 feet in diameter and 18 feet tall. In response, the military took what was left of the spacecraft and the alien remains inside to the nearby radar station for examination. Afterwards, it's rumored that all the evidence was taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. This plaque we see here in the photo marks the site of the crash, and who knows if something has been left behind. Many believe the Guy Huddle document from the FBI vault is referring to this crash, and in response, the FBI made a statement. They claimed that the document was just referring to some second or third-hand witness accounts, and no one was actually investigating this. If it was just a hoax, it's still pretty cool that it made it to the FBI archives. Number 5. Falcon Lake. The Falcon Lake incident took place in a remote part of Canada. Stefan watched the sky and saw one of the two devices land just a few hundred feet away from him. He walked over there to see what was going on and just thought it was some kind of strange aircraft that the Americans were testing out. He approached the door to take a look inside. Upon touching the craft, his rubber gloves melted quickly, and within a fraction of a second, the saucer closed its doors. This time, the aliens were alive and they were trapping him inside. The craft flew away, and he was knocked out by a mysterious red mist that filled the room. He woke back up in the forest and immediately went to the doctor. This famous photo here was captured of Stephen, which shows a very strange yet distinct pattern on his abdomen. Number 4. Maury Island. A man named Harold Dahl, who was working in a remote part of Washington State, had been gathering logs like he usually did when he noticed 6 massive donut-shaped flying saucers moving their way through the sky. They were about 2,000 feet away from him, and they described them as being about 100 feet in diameter with a central hole in the middle. The man named Harold Dahl noticed the aircraft flying much lower, and he thought it was about to crash. He heard a loud noise, and thousands of pounds of white metal material fell onto the ground. Dahl took home some of this mysterious metal and brought his boss with him to check it out. Upon his return, he started to notice that he was being followed around by men in black who warned him about not saying anything. Number 3. The Koyama Incident. In 1974, the USA picked up radar of an object moving at over 2,000 miles an hour. They just figured it was another meteor, weather balloon, satellite, or whatever at first. But their initial hypothesis changed when it started flying in zigzag-shaped patterns over the Gulf of Mexico. When it kept coming in closer at an altitude of 75,000 feet, it was clear that it was no weather balloon and certainly not a man-made thing. It then reportedly crashed into a small passenger plane in the state of Chihuahua near the Koyama Desert, not too far away from the Texas border. The U.S. Army began to take action as they investigate the civilian aircraft first. The next aircraft they found was a little bit more saucer-shaped, you could say. The extraterrestrial vehicle was only slightly dented by the collision, but it was clear that whatever was in there must have escaped. The Mexican government put it on the back of a truck and took it to a remote cliff top. They were unequipped with biohazard suits, and it's believed that a lethal bioagent zombie apocalypse type toxin was released when they opened it. Number 2. Milton Torres. One of the reasons why there are so many crashed UFOs is because the pilots are ordered to shoot them down. Milton Torres was given orders by the English government to take out those saucers when he was flying over East Anglia in Britain. He talked to several other pilots who had also experienced similar things while flying. The UFOs moved at incredible speeds, and he wasn't able to hit the target. Torres was led to a person dressed in civilian clothing who reassured him that he doesn't want to tell anyone or he might lose his job. The incident came out as a part of the Freedom of Information Act in Great Britain, so feel free to Google it yourself. Number 1. The Petrikov UFO Shootdown. According to Russian sources, during Desert Storm, an F-16 was ordered to launch weaponry at a UFO that was flying over Saudi Arabia. The crash site was 250 miles away, and a total of 5 different nations were in on the cover-up. A Russian official came forward and admitted that he was at the crash site and led the investigation. The Saudis were tripping out because they had never seen anything like this before, so they called in the US, the British, the Russians, and the French to take a look. As they look inside, the Saudis saw things that completely blew their minds, and the language on the controls were obviously from out of this world. Much of the UFO was missing though as a result of the missile explosion. There were also multiple seats that seemed like they would have been built for children. What happened to the alien passengers is still unknown. Petrikov claims that he had taken photos, but those were taken away.